One of the fairy tale myths regarding electricity is that physical Earth is always at zero potential. This is complete hokum with a capital F. When electrical energy is channeled into the physical Earth, it's actually the other way around. The soil is energized at various voltage levels dependent on distance, and that is exactly what you are seeing here. This video is showing a single ground rod driven to only 1 foot of depth, with a station-to-ground resistance of only 5 ohms, being subjected to a 2650 amp fault current for only 53 cycles, and that is less than 1 second. As is plain to see, the soil is no longer at zero potential, but rather heaving, boiling, and rolling to the cyclic AC voltage as it's pumped into and traveling through all of that dirt, gravel, sand, and clay. As a testament to the level of energy you may be exposed to in a case like this, keep in mind that this particular test you're watching was actually conducted in rock-solid frozen Missouri soil in the dead of winter. The voltage gradient distribution curve is pretty much the key to understanding your 2 points of electrical contact. It is the foundation of identifying not only the shock and electrocution hazards known as touch and step potentials, but also equipotential. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Please understand that the term voltage gradient distribution curve is nothing more than just a bunch of fancy syllables strung together that describes how voltage moves through the soil. And this is important because when the worker is exposed to an electrical hazard, he is typically, not always, but typically standing on that soil. So to begin with, dirt has resistance. The less dirt, the less resistance. The more dirt, the more resistance. Now, resistance is inversely proportionate to voltage, so this simply means that where there is more dirt, there is more resistance, which equates to less voltage. And where there is less dirt, there is less resistance, which equates to more voltage. Now, let's say that for whatever reason, voltage is introduced into the ground. This can be accomplished in any number of ways, including a downed conductor making contact with the ground, a downed conductor landing on a vehicle that is making contact with the ground, a temporary ground rod channeling a fault into the ground, the base of a pole or tower, an underground faulted cable, even a lightning strike. Anything that serves to conduct and channel voltage to the ground. Whatever the source of the electricity, at that exact location where it enters the earth, there is very little dirt, which means very little resistance. Therefore, you would expect the full amount of voltage to be present. From here, the voltage radiates away from the epicenter in all directions, but as it does so, it has to push through more and more dirt, which is more and more resistance. The more resistance it has to push through, the more the voltage level gets knocked down. So let's hit the ground with 10,000 volts and see how that plays out. For starters, right where the 10,000 volts hits the ground, there is very little dirt, which means very little resistance, which means it's a safe bet that we're going to have 10,000 volts at this point. As the voltage begins to radiate in all directions, it's going to start pushing through more dirt, which is more resistance, which begins to knock down that voltage level. So much so that after about 3 foot of travel, that voltage level is now halved from 10,000 volts to 5,000 volts. As the voltage continues to travel, it pushes through more and more dirt, which is more and more resistance. The voltage level continues to drop until after another 3 foot of travel, it is halved yet again. This time from 5,000 volts to 2,500 volts. After another 3 feet of travel, the voltage gets halved again, this time to about 1,250 volts. And the cycle continues. As a general rule of thumb, for every 3 foot of travel, the voltage level is halved. And this is only to be considered a general rule of thumb because it all depends on soil compaction, moisture content, soil characteristics, and the like. And that's your voltage gradient distribution curve. This is the common denominator in identifying your exposure risk to step potential, touch potential, mesh potential, metal to metal potential, and transfer potential.